think we're live.
I bet I'm moisturized and ready.
Big bets. I turned off my fan, so there's hopefully less noise in the background. So yeah, Gojo, welcome to the stream. Welcome. Today we're just gonna be discussing the Sukuna versus Gojo fight, Shinjuku Showdown. Just like discussing our thoughts on how the fight went down, the upsides, downsides, and then where we think it's gonna go from here. So yeah. Yeah, so I got DCA with me. He was here on the last stream. Good friend of mine. We've known each other for a long time. And he's also pretty knowledgeable on JJK, so yeah.
And I've never claimed to be non-biased. I'm extremely biased.
Oh, Megana versus Pochita, who wins? Ooh,
that's a little bit tougher.
yeah. I don't know, it's hard.
I actually don't know anything about the Chainsaw Man universe. I only saw season 1.
Because I was gonna discuss some manga stuff, but if you haven't seen it, then I don't want to like spoil it.
I'm not super into it. It didn't really catch my attention super hard, unfortunately.
All right, so there's like the Chainsaw Man form that like Denji can go into, but there's also like Pochita, he can turn into like the Chainsaw Devil himself. Like he is Chainsaw Devil, but like he has like a black form, the Black Chainsaw Man. And that one is like way more powerful than like Denji's version. And I don't know. He has like all the powers of Denji and then just like cranked up to like 1,000. He's super fast. Yeah, I don't know. How would that even interact with like Jujutsu? Like cursed energy and stuff.
You'd have to equalize the power systems.
Yeah. So anyways,
honestly, I'm not sure, but I think Sukuna could probably do something.
Yeah.
But anyways, you wanted to talk about the Gojo versus Megano fight.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna break it down into two parts. The round 1, which was the domain battles, and then round 2, which was like the Shikigami versus Limitless. So, starting off with round 1, what did you think of round 1?
Honestly, round 1 seemed to be a lot more of a showcase for Gojo's feats than it really did to be Sukuna. Because it was literally just shown that even though he did lose 3 domain clashes back to back, he was able to heal his burnt curse technique with reverse curse technique by destroying the part of his brain that holds the engraved technique.
Right.
And then he was able to even outspeed Sukuna doing the exact same thing and finally win the domain clash at the very end. I think it's a pretty clear win for Gojo, like I was talking to you about like just before the stream. The domains are entirely different. It doesn't matter how many times you stab Gojo with the little kitty knife if Gojo's domain is a tactical nuke. The minute that tactical nuke hits you, it's over.
Yeah. Oh, before I get into my part, is my audio good? I don't know. Is it good? Let me know in the chat if it's
good on
bad.
Discord, but I'm not sure about the stream.
All right. If it needs adjusting, just let me know. But yeah, I agree. Round 1 was pretty good. However, I don't know. I feel like okay. So the fight starts off with Hollow Purple, right? He like says to Sukuna, "You're the challenger." Blah 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 blah. But I feel like in doing that, he kind of gave his hand away. Cause Hollow Purple loses power the further it travels. Right? It wasn't like if it's like point blank, it clearly does more damage than if it's like from far.
Yeah.
And there was like too much distance between them, so instead of it being like a finishing shot, Sukuna was just able to figure out like how much energy it takes to block Hollow Purple and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like it wasn't that smart to start off the fight like that. And then they get into like the domain clashes, and Gojo loses because of the open versus closed domain stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there I'm like, was that really like the smartest thing you could do? Because we know like if he lets Sukuna open his domain, he could just teleport out and then teleport back in as soon as the domain finishes. And then Sukuna would be left with Curse Technique Burnout, and then he could just like go ham, you know?
Yeah.
And instead he tried to just beat the barrierless domain, or like the open domain, with his own closed domain. And it's so hard because I feel like realistically Choso, Yuji, and Inumaki should have told Gojo about it, right? We don't know if he actually did or not. Yeah, because they knew about it. Like when Kusakabe is like bringing up the open domain, Choso starts talking to them about how like Kenjaku had the same thing, and all of them are like super shocked as if they're hearing it for the first time. So I'm like, did they tell Gojo or not? Because that would have made such a big difference in how Gojo decided to try and tackle the situation, you know?
Yeah, honestly, it really does make you wonder with how some of the interactions went while they were watching the Gojo fight. When they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, it doesn't have a domain? Really? Like, there's no outside like actual structure to it?
Yeah.
Did you just not tell, your best fighter about all the inside information you had?" But honestly, in my personal headcanon, I like to believe that they did tell Gojo, and Gojo is fighting more out of like to feed his ego, his
Mm.
own want for like the fight of his life, because I'm sure Gojo could have found some way to cheese around Sukuna's domain, but he would rather fight it head on and prove that he's stronger.
Right. So I saw something like that too in like comments on TikTok and stuff. And yeah, it's probably what he would have done if he did know. But I just feel like from like an outside perspective, it wasn't that smart of
Oh,
him.
definitely not. Gojo was not fighting with,
His brains.
his brain. He was fighting with his ego.
Yeah, and that brings me up to my brings me to my first point, which was that there were a ton of parallels between Toji and Gojo, right? Like like the expressions that Gojo was making before the fight were like super similar to what Toji was doing in the hidden inventory flashback, and the clothes that Gojo was wearing was like super reminiscent of Toji. It was basically his own outfit, right? And something that happened to Toji was that as soon as Gojo had his awakening moment, Toji was like, what was it again? Like he was feeling uneasy. Like he felt a sort of sensation that like something bad was gonna happen, and instead of sticking to his gut, he went and fought Gojo head on anyways, and then that resulted in him losing. Whereas if he like stuck to his core values, he would have probably been able to win. And I feel like Gojo was kind of put into the same box where he didn't really stick to his usual fighting style, and I don't know, he felt super different. Maybe it's because of his experience in the Prism realm, but yeah, I don't know. He wasn't really fighting the smartest way that he possibly could fight.
It's interesting
And
that you say that, because I do think that's an interesting thing to bring up, that he's not fighting like he normally does, but you also need to remember that in every fight in the series that Gojo has been in, he's never been fighting an equal or anyone even close to his level. So
yeah,
he's never had to really dig into his more experienced fighting style where he has to freestyle like a lot.
yeah,
Like you
that is
see in this
true.
battle, he freestyles a lot because
Yeah,
normally against anybody else, they're not even able to get past his limitless, so it doesn't matter what he does. He can just toy around with them a lot more. Like when he was
true.
fighting Jogo for the first time, he was trolling the shit out of him. He literally went to go grab his student.
Yeah, yeah.
Disrespecting at the battle.
True. That is true.
He's just a disrespectful guy in normal.
And
But I
another,
feel like in this one he was just trying to indulge himself.
yeah, and that is further like it's like solidified in the last chapter where like they did say he was like doing it for himself, and yeah, I agree. That is true. And another thing to note was that talking about the limitless, how like normal characters wouldn't be able to bypass it. Um when I was reading the Shibuya incident in the manga, I thought that Jogo and Hanami were easily able to like bypass the limitless. That was like how I thought it was going down. And then I watched the anime scene, and it turns out that even with domain amplification, they were struggling to break the limitless. I saw like, and then when I look at the panels here in the manga with like Gojo versus Sukuna, his domain amplification is on such a higher level that it is easily just turning into normal punches. Not like super strong punches, but like Gojo is shocked, you know?
Yeah.
So then he has to like switch up his whole strategy, and that's where like the freestyling starts. So yeah.
Yeah, it takes a lot of energy that you need to pump into your domain amplification or have a really deep understanding of the domain amplification to even scratch or get past limitless. So that's why Jogo and Hanami got absolutely demolished in that fight. It was not close. Hanami got pushed into a wall and
Yeah.
eviscerated.
Okay,
IT rip.
what are your thoughts on the constant POV switches between the students and like the actual fight? Did you like that, or did you think it was like an artistic choice but not really your type of thing, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think honestly, since we're talking about the two strongest and they're breaking a lot of preconceived rules about Jujutsu in general, we really did need them to explain what the hell was going on, because although they're telling us like it shouldn't be possible to do this,
Mm-hmm.
since these two are the pinnacle of Jujutsu, and especially Gojo being able to perceive cursed energy in a way that just about nobody else can because of his six eyes, he's able to break a lot of rules. We did need them to explain what he was doing
Yeah,
and why it was able to work. Because
fair
if they
enough.
didn't, I guarantee you this fight would have been probably a lot worse due to us not knowing what was going on.
Yeah, I agree on that. I saw a lot of people complaining that like there was too much chit chat on like the student side and not enough talking in the fight, which made it like it felt kind of emotionless. If I'm comparing it like to Yuji versus Mahito in Shibuya, where they were like constantly going back and forth, Yuji and Mahito, and like they were like taunting each other, and they were talking about their own philosophies, ideologies, like the I am you moment. A lot of people were saying that that type of feeling was missing from this fight. Um, I agree, but at the same time, I feel like this battle um, wasn't a battle of ideologies. It was just to see who was the strongest, and they were both trying to enjoy themselves and indulge themselves in the battle, in the moment. They weren't like the other were like bantering back and forth and like like playfully commenting on each other, like how Gojo says that Sukuna looks like a little alien with his mama and papa with the two Shikigami. But it wasn't like a battle of ideology. So I think that's fine. Cuz like the real battle of ideology would be like Yuji versus Sukuna later. So I think that's why Gege is saving it. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I 100% get what you're saying, and I really agree that it's not a battle of ideologies. Like when you look at Yuji versus Mahito, they're both fighting to prove who's right
Yeah.
about their ideology, and Yuji's just saying, my job in this is just to kill curses, and anything that happens after just happens. I'm just a cog, and right now, all I want to do is kill you. Gojo and Sukuna have just been bored like their whole lives, and they just want to fight. It's just a fight to see who's the strongest and to get that satisfaction. There
Yeah.
doesn't really need to be any like heavier narrative about it because neither of these characters have been shown really to fight for like a scheme. Like that'd be like Kenjaku, like in the future. Like
Yeah.
Kenjaku's been fighting for the past like what 1,000 years for whatever he's trying to do next.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
if you want a fight with a lot of narrative significance and a lot of like planning, wait for the Kenjaku segment because that was not it.
Yeah, true.
Maybe even Kashimo versus Sukuna will have that emotional release that you're hoping for.
Right. And oh, one thing about the domain battles that I would have liked to have happened is that it would have been cool if one of Mei's crows was actually caught inside of the domain sphere of like Gojo's barrier, so that the students could actually see what was going on inside the domain. Because, for example, now the students still don't know that it's possible to use domain amplification inside of your domain while keeping your sure hit active. They don't know that.
That's
Because
true.
they could only see that like Gojo's barrier is shaking from the outside from all the slashes, you know?
Yeah.
But
That actually brings up an
yeah.
even weirder point. Like, when two sure hits are being activated inside of a domain, which one happens to a third party? Do both or neither?
I think neither, because the reason why the sure hits don't work is because the effective range is what's clashing. It's not the hit itself, because the hit can only start when the range is like complete, when it like completely encapsulates you, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because if
It's
it
weird to think about.
yeah, because if it were really the sure hits itself clashing, I feel like Sukuna would gradually take damage from the unlimited void, and Gojo would have scratches and stuff, but that wasn't the case. And also another thing, with Megami versus Dagon in the Shibuya incident, when Megami opens his domain inside of Dagon's domain, Dagon's sure hit completely stops, because the barrier needs to be closed in order for like a sure hit to activate, which for me is kind of an indicative that you need to have your range be completed before the sure hit itself can activate. That's why I think they clash.
Okay. I can respect that. Makes a lot of sense. But then when Gojo's domain would disappear, the crow would be absolutely demolished if it was close enough to be inside the domain in the first place.
Yeah, but I think that's fine because Mimi has a ton of crows.
He's
So
willing to throw crow's life for nothing.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of what Bird Strike is, right?
Yeah, but that's for like a last ditch effort.
True, true, true,
She
true.
uses it like what, once? Once.
I'm not sure how many times she uses it, but it is a last ditch effort, yeah. And then like another thing that I thought was really cool was how Gojo turned his barrier into like the size of a basketball using the knowledge of the Prism Realm. That was super
Yeah, that
cool
was
to see.
really cool.
Yeah, that was super cool. I like that. It showed that even like his worst experiences were still learning experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And like how Kusakabe is like talking about how you need to know how to envision it happening before you can actually turn a domain that small, because otherwise you would just crush you and the other person inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Gojo using all of his experiences throughout like his entire life, even using the
Fallen
the
Blossom
secret
Emotion.
family
Yeah.
emotion that he learned as a kid. He's like, yeah, I haven't used this in a really long time since I learned my domain, but now seems like a pretty good time.
Yo.
It was really cool to see him drawing on even something he was learning as a kid and he hasn't used in close to a decade now.
Yeah. And
And then I think right after he used that, he lost the next domain with the basketball-sized one and destroyed Malevolent Shrine.
right.
And he was able to summoned his domain like what, like 0.01 seconds faster, and that was cause for a domain win.
Mm-hmm. It just goes to show, like, when you're at that level of Jujutsu, even like a 0.1 second difference can like change the entire game. So it's pretty impressive. But then another thing that I wanted to talk about was that a lot of people were saying that Sukuna wasn't fighting at like he wasn't giving it his all during the domain clashes because he wanted to have Mahoraga adapt, right? So they were saying if he didn't have the 10 shadows, that his domain would be more powerful or whatever. And I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if I agree with
I
that.
don't think I agree with that really at all. And it's weird to talk about as well because we're kind of getting into the topic of like the end of the fight when they're talking about it. But when Gojo says that Sukuna wasn't really giving it his all, I think that's more of an interpretation of like he wasn't able to break Sukuna's plan that he had formulated at the very beginning of the battle. He was never able to really make him shake off of it. Like, I'm pretty sure Gojo's plan going into this was probably something loose, like, I don't know, win the domain clash, and then just make him incredibly close to death, like closer than Yuji was.
Yeah,
Back
so
when
that he
got
could save
killed the first
Megami.
time. So he could save Megami. And
Yeah.
then when that failed to work, Gojo then really starts to freestyle, but Sukuna never really has that moment where he's forced to divert from his plan. So I think that's more of what he's talking about when Sukuna wasn't giving his all, rather than it being a power thing.
Yeah, I could see that, but the way how I interpreted it was that when he says he's not giving it his all, it was more so that he wasn't using all of his abilities that he has. For example, the fire arrow, right? Although the fire arrow wouldn't break through the limitless, he still didn't use it because he knew that it wouldn't like make a difference, right? But to go from Gojo's perspective, it just looks like Sukuna's holding back, if that makes sense. But like Sukuna knows that even if he wasn't holding back all his different techniques, that it wouldn't have made a difference. He needed the 10 shadows to show him how cleave should be used against the limitless. Because if he didn't have the 10 shadows, his cleave would just keep jamming inside the limitless each time, like it was in the beginning of the battle, right? So yeah, and like at some point in chapter 228, Gojo's wondering why Sukuna went the hard way of like trying to win the domain clashes, right? So Gojo flipped the strength of the interior with the exterior so that the inside or like the outside was stronger. And what Sukuna did was he turned his sure hit off, and then he was using domain application or something like that. He was using something, and then he put the Mahoraga wheel on Megami inside of his own shadow or inside of his own soul. I don't know how that works, but he did that so that Mahoraga could adapt to Infinite Void or like the domain.
It's confusing as hell because
Yeah,
it's
because
not exactly clear. I think that's like one of the few times where we actually don't get any real exposition on what's going on. They show us but don't tell us.
right. Because like now we don't know if Sukuna would have lost that domain clash or won it if he wasn't like relying on the 10 shadows. Because like Gojo speculates at the end of the fight that he would have won either way, right? That Gojo didn't stand a chance. But then I'm like, if you knew you didn't stand a chance going into the fight, why did you even fight? Outside of course, like him wanting to satisfy himself and such. But like from a narrative perspective, you wanted to save Megami. You wanted to change the Jujutsu world. Why go into the fight then if you knew you didn't stand a chance? Right? So I feel like it's more that Gojo sees him as an equal, and that the 10 shadows was more like a tool to help him like progress the fight quicker, but that eventually he would have done it either way if he didn't have the 10 shadows. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's confusing.
It also really brings up the point of like he is a reincarnated sorcerer, and there's two people in his body. And when he tanked the effects of Unlimited Void, he made Megami tank it
Mm-hmm.
and had Maharaga also adapt. So it's weird to think about if you're talking about Heian era Sukuna. Would he have
Yeah.
his domain like at all? Like, because he wouldn't have Maharaga to Tino adapt and break
True.
him out of it. He wouldn't have Megami to tank the effects for him. So, if this domain clash happened in Heian time, I think Sukuna just loses.
Yeah. But like, I don't know how to put it, but people were also saying that because Sukuna still had his trump card and he didn't use his trump card, which could be like a curse tool or Yorozu's gift or whatever, because he didn't use that means that Gojo would have still lost. And I feel like the trump card that he's keeping is more like an area of effect attack to like get rid of a bunch of sorcerers that are ganging up on him, but it wouldn't have mattered against the Limitless. That's what I think. But again, we won't ever know. Well, we might know if he uses his trump card later on against like Kashimo or the students or whatever, but for now we don't know. So yeah,
I don't think we'll really find out what it is, and probably for like another chapter or two.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure he needs to use it either, because if he can just cut space, I don't know what anyone else is gonna do except for like maybe Kashimo using like a pure electrical technique that turns his body into pure energy.
That it would be like impossible to cut him because he's energy.
Yeah, that's probably like the only way I can see it working. Because if Gojo's 6 eyes can't even see it happening, I don't know what else anybody else would do. Like, really.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
Gojo's 6 eyes are supposed to be able to see everything about like Jujutsu, like not everything, but a lot more than meets the eye, and he wasn't even able to see that it was a slash at space that would hit him, or he got perception blitzed, which I would find even worse.
Agreed. Yeah. Also, for like the last part of like the domain part of the fight, I think it was really impressive how, despite like Sukuna, relying on the 10 shadows and whatnot, Gojo was still able to consistently beat Sukuna up inside of the domains each time. Like after the first time, of course, because, he wasn't prepared, but when he was prepared, he was consistently winning. So, I don't know, it's super weird where people say like Gojo didn't stand any chance.
Yeah, Gojo has hands. It's actually really funny to watch, because I know he's not fighting anyone nearly as powerful when he's in Yuji's body, but it feels like when he's in Yuji's body, he has hands. When he's fighting against like the special grade, for example, he's just throwing the special grade around in Yuji's body in like the first arc, and then he hops into Megami's body and he just loses all semblance of like being able to like 1v1 and throw hands with people. The minute he had to fight Gojo, he was getting slammed through buildings. He was getting smacked up. He's getting red shoved in his face. Absolutely getting demolished. And then he summons Maharaga and turns it into a 2v1. Absolutely the funniest thing known to man. I think that's genuinely where the fraud Kuna meme started, was the minute you could see Sukuna getting just mollywopped by Gojo in hand-to-hand combat and he summons Maharaga. That was the exact minute the fraud Kuna meme started.
True. Wow.
So you have to wonder, does Meguna lose his ability to throw hands, or was it all just the plan to lull Gojo into a false sense of security at the very end?
That could be it too. Hmm.
Could be.
Hold on, check your Discord real quick.
I bet. I bet. So, even when you're talking about Gojo versus Sukuna in just the most broad sense, something that you also really need to take into account is yes, it is a little bit fraud-like, and yes, in my opinion, we have to talk about Heian era Sukuna and Meguna with completely different classifications of the character itself, simply because they have entirely different win conditions in this fight. I'm not sure what Sukuna could do if he was in Heian era, simply because we don't know anything about his abilities from back then. It is safe to assume that any ability he shows right now that doesn't use the 10 shadows is available to him, or was available to him, minus like Yorozu's gift. But it really breaks my heart that they never really flushed out his arsenal more. I do understand now that they're saving it for whatever happens next with Kashimo and, him getting jumped by, the rest of the students once Kashimo inevitably dies. But it makes it really tough to talk about Sukuna's actual strength because we simply just don't know a lot of his arsenal. Because he has the black box techniques with being able to open up the fire and things like that, but we genuinely don't know. So when you talk about Meguna, you just add the 10 shadows, and it's weird because Megumi's never been able to use the shadows in this way. Especially not being able to really enhance a lot of his summons with his own cursed energy. Like, we saw Sukuna summon Nue, that thing was a kaiju.
True.
When normally, like, Megumi's Nue is like, I don't know, the size of a big dog. Maybe like a medium dog.
I will say though that the kaiju Nue is probably because it fused with the snake.
Wait, didn't the snake already die?
Yeah. That's how it was able to fuse.
That's why. Yeah, I get you. Never mind.
Yeah. Because they need to die in order to fuse, so, or like a totality fusion at least.
For real. But that brings us into like what happens next with not just with the domain, but Gojo versus the Shikigami.
Right, Shikigami versus Limitless. I don't know what to think about this part of the fight. Okay, the first thing that stood out to me is how Sukuna was able to use the Shikigami abilities outside of the Shikigami being summoned. That was super interesting. Like, we knew it was possible already because in the Yorozu fight, Sukuna uses the wheel, like without Mahoraga being summoned. So we knew it was possible, but then he takes it a whole step further and he uses like the elephant's water and copies Choso and then uses like the water in a piercing blood motion. That's super interesting. And like, it makes me think like we didn't even see the full capabilities of the 10 shadows, because if he can do all of this, then Sukuna should also just be able to use like Nue's lightning without like summoning Nue. And he should also just be able to use like the Dare's healing, which, he already has reverse curse technique, but apparently like the Dare's healing is like more efficient than your own reverse curse technique. So he could probably use that to like recover without, or like recover from the brain damage without like using his own reverse curse technique and like depleting his cursed energy. I think that's pretty interesting. And like the bull's ability, whereas like the more distance he travels, the more powerful his attack becomes. If Sukuna uses that ability without summoning the Shikigami itself, I feel like his punches could become just as powerful as like Gojo's punches, which are enhanced by blue. So like they suck you in. So yeah,
It
they're.
makes you wonder, like, where's the line? Like, what techniques can he use, and what
Mhm.
techniques can he not use?
I think he can use all of them, like without summoning the Shikigami. Because why would it only be possible to use the wheel and the water? It's just that we haven't like seen it yet. If that makes sense.
That's true, but it makes you question it even more, because if he could use the deer's healing, why wouldn't he?
True,
I
true,
feel
true.
like that would have been like a way less effort win than almost losing, because let's not get it twisted. He almost lost this. In theory, it could have gone either way.
Yeah.
But if he could have used the deer's healing without summoning it, why not just use it to heal his brain damage and then open the domain? Because Gojo couldn't even heal his burnt out curse technique at that point. He just could not
Yeah,
open his domain
true,
anymore. It would have
true.
been a way easier fight for Sukuna. I get narratively why it didn't happen, but it makes you wonder, can he do it?
Yeah.
There might be a limit on what he can use from the Shikigami.
Yeah, that's a fair assumption. Also, something that stood out to me is how Sukuna tried using Megami as a pawn. Like Megami resides within their soul, right?
Yeah.
And he tried to make Megami take the hit of Unlimited Void. But what ended up happening is that it's Megami's body. So like you can't make a soul take the hit. The body takes the hit regardless. So then when Sukuna tried opening his domain, he couldn't do it either because his brain was fried. And we know that people like Sukuna, they don't need like a functioning heart to like move around, like because in the arc with the detention center, Sukuna rips out Yuji's heart and then he's still able to fight. But as soon as he switches back to Yuji, then Yuji just collapses. So that tells me that if you're like a cursed object, or maybe not even a cursed object in general, but like maybe just Sukuna, um, he can still move around despite his body being totally damaged. So I'm wondering what's gonna happen to Megami, because his brain is fried, right? Because 0.2 seconds of sitting inside of Unlimited Void made the people from the Shibuya incident who were like in the train station, they tapped out for like 2 months or so, I think, or like 4 months. And Sukuna was inside of the Unlimited Void for so long that his eyes started bleeding. Right? So that means his brain is like mush at this point, right? So if he switches back to Megami, what's gonna happen to Megami? Is he just dead on the spot or brain dead or what's gonna happen, you know?
I think he'll be in a similar position to like how his sister Sumiki was for quite a while, where she was kind of in a coma and very
Mm.
unresponsive. It might even be like a parallel where we get like a flashback to like how Sumiki was and it pans out and it's like how he is now. It's like maybe a parallel in that mind. But I don't think, unless something magic happens, like he gets his body 100% healed, I don't think Megami can realistically come back. He might be able to fight from the inside, but the
Mm-hmm.
minute he switches back, he's done.
Yeah, I could see that. Unless like Sukuna just heals his brain because he wants to open his domain because he needs the brain functioning in order to open his domain, right? So maybe at some point he's gonna heal Megami's brain, but there's also the possibility that he just does the same thing what he did to Yuji, and he's like, okay, Megami's body is like starting to deteriorate. All right, I'm just gonna put my soul into a finger and then transfer to another body. You know, he could do that, and then just leave Megami there to die, right? So
He
I'm
could, but he would be severely nerfing himself.
true, true, but it's like a give and take because he wants to open his domain at some point again, right? And he can't do that anymore because Megami's brain is fried.
Hmm, I don't know whose body he would take.
I mean, it could be anyone. It could just be like a random stranger, like a passerby.
It'd be Kusakabe. Not
No.
Kusakabe, Takaba. He would take Takaba's
Oh
body.
my god. Please no. Please no.
Sukuna just, it'd be really funny
What?
if I was just absolutely the strongest and everyone died right now. And he just laughs and it would be over. Even the camera gets cut in half.
Damn. That's crazy.
I jest, of course. He won't do that.
No.
But
But
that's too much narrative significance.
speaking of Takaba,
No.
where was he this entire fight? Where was he? He wasn't inside the room with Yuji and Kusakabe and those guys. He wasn't there. So I thought the entire time that Takaba was somewhere on the field, right? He was like hiding somewhere and just like watching the fight, and that like whatever he finds funny would happen, right? So that would like influence the fight in Gojo's favor. Because we know Gojo doesn't care if he uses allies in the fight, because he does the same thing with Utahime and the grandpa, what's his name, Gakuganji,
Yeah, Gakuganji.
to like hype up the Hollow Purple. So Gojo doesn't care if he uses allies. So I thought Takaba would use his curse technique to make the fight go in his favor, but yeah, he's just nowhere to be seen. Where is he?
He's probably in like the studio writing up his funniest jokes.
Meh.
They don't want him to see just how powerful Sukuna is, because then he might not find it funny for him to win. He might just be scared. So like, all right, Takaba, go in this like black room and just think about Sukuna losing. And he's really trying hard. He's really trying hard to like cope with how strong Sukuna is.
Yeah.
Honestly though, he's probably just like, he's probably in there somewhere, maybe like in the bathroom or something, because he's just a comic relief character. He'll come out randomly like next chapter and be like, so what did I miss, guys? And it'll just be like Gojo's
I would be
body
so
just, like,
mad.
completely cut in half.
I would be so mad. I would be so mad.
No, I think it'd be perfect.
Yeah. No, absolutely not. Okay, and then in the middle of the fight with like Gojo's Limitless versus the Shikigami, he lands his first Black Flash, and it knocks Sukuna out.
Oh yeah, he got folded.
He got folded, but he got super lucky, because as he got knocked out, the wheel fell down and made its final adaptation. And then Papa Mahoraga was able to save him again. And then this goes back to the end of the fight, where like they were saying Gojo didn't stand a chance, and I'm like, bro, he got knocked out, and Mahoraga had to save him twice. Once in the Infinite Void, and another time with the Black Flash.
Yeah, it's a very weird statement. It feels very out of character for Gojo to say like, oh, he wasn't even trying, because without Mahoraga in those exact moments, he would have been absolutely fried. Especially when he got knocked out, because Gojo could have just done whatever he wanted. Pause.
Yeah.
Whatever he wanted, such as like ripping out his heart. Because he was saying that he wanted to take his heart, lungs, spleen, liver, everything, bringing him closer to death. So without Mahoraga high key was the MVP this fight.
And then they were saying like, yeah, if Mahoraga wasn't there, that Sukuna would be fighting completely different. And I'm just like, okay, but the Black Flash is it's like a how do I say that? It's like you're not guaranteed a Black Flash, right? It happens with luck. It happens with luck. So at any point in the fight, before Mahoraga was in play, Gojo could have hit him with a Black Flash, and then he'd be knocked out, and then he would be in the same predicament, right? Or like without Mahoraga, like what would he do then? And like you can make the same argument that like Sukuna could have landed a Black Flash on Gojo, But then my counter argument is no, he could not because the limitless was in play. And when you use domain amplification, it's like a technique on its own, so you can't land Black Flash. Or like, that's my headcanon. I don't know if it's confirmed that you can or can't land Black Flash while using domain amplification, but I feel like you
I don't think
can.
it's been confirmed anyway, but that's actually a very interesting theory.
Yeah. Because Gojo can land Black Flashes on Sukuna, but if Sukuna lands a Black Flash on Gojo, it would just get stopped in the Limitless. And then at some point with Mahoraga's first adaptation of the Limitless, or the Infinity, I should say, what he does is like change his cursed energy to match the Limitless so that he can go through it, and that creates like an opening which allows Sukuna to use the piercing water, and that's how he catches Gojo. So he could have done that and then like maybe gone for a Black Flash or whatever, but Gojo would have seen it coming, right? Because even when he was getting ganged up on with Mahoraga, Agito, and Sukuna, he was still like dodging and weaving everything. So
He was not trying to get hit by anything.
Yeah.
And then Agito got absolutely annihilated by a blue.
That was super fun to see. That was super.
That was
good.
amazing to see. Like when he gets punched in the back, literally doesn't flinch at all. He's like, I've
Mm-hmm.
been thinking for a while. You're really just not strong enough to be here, and then gets one shot.
Yup. So I feel like up until that point in the fight, it was like a 10 out of 10 for me. It was so good. Like, yeah, there were like little things that were like kind of iffy or weird, or we didn't really know what was happening until like later or whatever, but it was still pretty good. I would say like a 10 or at least a 9 at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to the ending of the chapter, or the ending of the fight, where Gojo gets off-screened. You have any thoughts on that?
I have a lot to say about that.
All right, let's hear it.
As the big Gojo fan, known to man, how dare they do that to my beautiful blue-eyed king? How dare they do that? Because it's even worse because it just goes like Black Flash, Black Flash, Black Flash, purple 100%, blowing up Sukuna, Mahoraga, and himself, and then him just walking up. Title's like, he's the strongest. And then literally the next chapter, we just start off with Gojo already talking to his dead friends. And then midway through the chapter, we get a fucking picture of him chopped in half and dying in the ground. Like, okay, sure, man. Okay. I would have preferred
go ahead.
Just randomly show the chop and then like the chapter ending. Then it do that. Because if you off screen your most popular character, it feels so bad.
Yeah. And like I'm not mad at the fact that Gojo lost or the fact that he died or whatever, because you and I both agreed like on the last stream that he was destined to lose for the sake of the plot, for the sake of the narrative. Like we both saw it coming. But the way how it happened is not good. Like, don't get me wrong, like there's a really cool aspect in having it, like having him be all hyped up in the previous chapter and then losing in the next. That's fine. Even the jump cut is fine. But then they should have like done a miniature flashback of like Sukuna charging up the attack. But it's just, he's good one chapter, at the end of one chapter, and then at the beginning of the next we get a flashback, and then it's just the end of the fight. Like, yeah, we get an explanation on how Sukuna did it, but we still don't get to see it. And it just leaves so much room for speculation that, in my opinion, isn't good. Because during this very fight, I mean, it was the chapter before that when Gojo's firing off the red into the sky, the narrator says that whenever you use a curse technique, there's like a build up, right? You have to build up your cursed energy and then channel it into the technique. And Sukuna, with all the knowledge and stuff and insight that he has, he's able to notice it. And I would assume that Gojo with the six eyes is also able to notice when his opponent is using a technique, right? That's how he's been dodging Agito and Mahoraga the whole time, because he can just see it happening. And like even in like the original Gojo versus Jogo fight, when he's like driving in the car with Ijichi, he tells Ijichi to go off without him because he can like see Gojo coming from far, because the six eyes can just look through regular objects. They only see cursed energy. Right? That's how he knew Jogo was coming. He can just see him. But he has to like be concentrating, of course, but I don't know. It's so weird that he gets like the Black Flash amp and he has like his reverse curse technique on and whatever, and then he still somehow manages to get cut, even though he should be able to see it coming. And like the explanation is that instead of making the target for the cleave Gojo, the target was the space inside of the infinity. And because Gojo exists within that space, the space being cut also means that Gojo as a byproduct gets cut as well. So it's like a durability. It's like durability
really
negation, right?
It's super questionable. That one decision kind of leaves you with more questions than answers.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since, like you're saying, Gojo with his six eyes should be able to see, and it makes you wonder, did he not just believe that it would hit him? Because that doesn't make sense. Did he get perception blitzed? Because we've seen with Mahoraga cutting space, we see the exact moment it happens is when he cuts off Gojo's arm and cuts the buildings behind him. That's the exact moment that adaptation happens. And you can see Gojo is very surprised that it even hit him, but that should have been stuck in the back of his mind as something that's possible.
Right.
He saw it once. He knows what the signature for the curse energy looks like, so we should be ready for it next time. But a Gojo amp by 3 Black Flashes in the zone and at the peak of his curse energy output at this point gets caught off guard and one shot. It's a very, I don't want to say bad way to end the fight, but
no, it is bad.
It's so unsatisfying.
Yeah. And 'cause I was telling people that to me it was really weird how Gojo was standing in the midst of an active malevolent shrine and he was like taking that just fine, but then he got chopped up by one cleave. And like at first I was like, yeah, it's one regular cleave. I didn't really understand how the cleave was like a durability negation, but even with that in mind, I'm like, it still doesn't make all that much sense, because with the Black Flash amp, he should have enough cursed energy to reverse curse technique his whole body back on while he's getting chopped, which is the same thing that he was doing inside the shrine. Right? He like, as his body is getting chopped, he should just be able to reattach himself.
Yeah, he should have been able to do like a Deadpool kind of Looney Tunes-esque thing where he just like slides his torso back on.
No, I'm not even saying that. I'm not even saying that. I'm like saying like the cleave is like a blade, right? So as the blade is passing through his body, like it enters the body at one point, and then like as the blade is moving through, the body just reattaches at the other side again. So like before the blade has even left the body, it's already like reattached on the other side, like that. I don't know, maybe I'm like expecting too much from Gojo, but I feel like he's strong enough to be able to do that. And especially with the Black Flash amp, like, come on.
It reminds me of a theory that a lot of people had a while ago where Sukuna's dismantle and cleave have soul damage. And that he, at this point, chose to activate the soul damage on top of hitting space, which would damage Gojo's soul to a point where it can't be repaired, just like how you can't use reverse curse technique to heal like Mahito's transfiguration because its damage to the soul can't be undone.
Right.
So if they would have given us that explanation while also showing us Sukuna hitting him and Gojo not expecting it, it would have been a lot better. But now all we can do is just theorize and talk about it, and I don't even think that's a satisfying explanation. Like, why just turn it on now?
Yeah.
Why not before? So yeah, more questions than answers, like I said before.
I'm personally in the camp that I think that Sukuna doesn't have soul damage on his cleave in this mantle or whatever, and that like Angel and Inamaki they were like going to get healed by Shoko, but Shoko isn't as good at healing as like Sukuna is, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think they didn't get healed. It's not a case of it's not a case of soul damage being, at least in my opinion, soul damage being the reason why. And
yeah, I'm not personally in that camp either.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
Well, Kashimo, you think he's gonna actually do something?
So, do I think Kashimo's gonna do a lot? I think with his MacGuffin cursed technique, whatever it is, it can literally be anything. But I think the only way he stands a chance is if he removes his physical body in the first place and turns his whole body into energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way he stands a chance, because now that Sukuna can cut space itself, if he has a physical body that can be cut, because as far as we've seen, I don't think he has, like, have we seen Kashimo activate reverse curse technique?
No.
Because he never really took any damage from Hakari.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right on that one. So
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he does have it, but if he doesn't have it, that means that one slash, that's a GG and a handshake for Kashimo.
Yeah, and even if he has like the durability to block cleave, if Sukuna right now has unlocked a cleave that can bypass all durability, how does anyone even stand up to this? Because, for example, Yuji, right? Yuji's whole thing is that his body is naturally durable. And now Sukuna has a durability negation attack. Like, bro, how are the good guys gonna win?
The trick question, they're not. Unless Kashimo does something spectacular.
Yeah.
I think he can. He's gonna have to take away something from Sukuna so drastic that it evens out the playing field. Or Gojo comes back.
Yeah.
Because the title for the next, or like the ending like note of the chapter was like run quickly to death's door, which makes me think Gojo's not dead. Because if you go back yes, I'm on copium, but let me speak my piece. I'm on copium. But when they were talking about why Gojo was able to come back when he fought Toji, he was saying that you forgot to cut off my head. And reverse curse technique starts in the brain. And when we get the close-up of Gojo's body, we get to see that his head is completely intact along with the lower or the upper half of his torso.
Yep.
So it makes me think that he's still savable in a way. We also get to see lotuses, which are a symbol of rebirth.
Yep.
Which makes me think we might see another awakened Gojo.
Or
maybe
I don't think he's gonna awaken, but he might come back.
Something.
Yeah. Also, I'm not sure if I pronounced your name correctly, but Nagihan G in the chat says cutting infinity also wasn't a unsatisfying explanation because Gojo's barrier is like, it's not a shield that needs to be penetrated. It just slows down every attack. So he needs to cut time, not space. And yeah, I agree. It's a weird explanation. Even though like I understand why it works, it still doesn't make it any less weird. Because the way how I interpreted it was that if you have a slash that can bypass the infinity, it means to me that your slash has infinite range. That's how I looked at it. But if your slash has infinite range, then it's so problematic. Like, where do we go from here? Sukuna's too powerful. Because the whole reason why Gege Akutami hates Gojo was because Gojo was too powerful for the story. And he made Gojo in mind of like being the ceiling of power in the story. And then he just goes right ahead and he makes the villain even more powerful than the ceiling of the power system. Like, bro, what?
Yeah, it's just really messy, and I think when Gege made the joke like, "Oh, looks like I forgot to write or draw a chapter," it really makes me think like we do need like some explanations for what happened last chapter and what what Sukuna has gained and how it caught Gojo in the first place. Because just saying it without really any more context about it, it feels very unsatisfying. And I think it is a
Yeah.
poor choice for the story going forward.
So like Joe brings up how like when Gojo said the hollow purple hit him, it affected him less because it's his own cursed energy. So they think that since Yuji is like soaked in Sukuna's energy, that like he would be resilient to Sukuna's curse technique or whatever. And I would agree with that, but this is a durability negation. So even if Yuji becomes more durable to a regular cleave or dismantle or whatever, um, if it negates all durability, then like Yuji's durability just wouldn't play a factor, even if he is more durable against Sukuna's techniques. Like it's so problematic that the ending. Like it's a good attempt at writing a good or decent ending, but it just doesn't stick the landing for me.
Yeah, and I don't even know, like even if Yuji was made more durable, he still has no reverse curse technique.
Mm-hmm.
So if he gets like an arm chopped off, that arm is gone. If he gets
Yeah.
a leg chopped off, that leg is gone. So, regardless of how durable he is, Sukuna is more powerful. Even
Yeah.
if Yuji can like live all the shots, he's not dealing any damage.
Yeah.
So, it I don't see a way realistically for Yuji to get involved unless he does truly have like the soul technique or like a body swap technique or where he can manipulate souls or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or if he somehow unlocks Sukuna's curse technique.
Mm.
Like if he can mirror the space slash and they cancel each other out, then I can see him being somewhat involved in the fight. But other than that, there's really no place in these coming fights for Yuji to step in.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. So it's kind of rough, and while I do think that the Gojo rebirth theory has like some merit with like the lotuses and whatever, um, there's someone also pointed out how like at the end of the JJK Zero movie, when Rika's curse is what do you call it, solved or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you see like a bunch of these white orbs flying around, like they're just floating around the area, and people are saying that the same orbs could be seen in this chapter. So like if you look on the second to last page, or no, the third to last page, because the second two last pages are double spreads, or a double spread. So on the third last page, where you have like the Sukuna face shot, you see like the little orbs flying around, like the shot before it.
Unfortunately, I do.
So people were saying that Gojo's curse was lifted, and his curse being that he was like cursed to be the strongest, and like when Sukuna takes over the title of the strongest, that curse is lifted, and it means that Gojo's dead.
What if we combine the two theories and Gojo comes back and he's not burdened by being the strongest anymore? Maybe he comes back and it's like a binding vow for being able to come back. He has to give up his curse technique or something. I would take that. I'll take Gojo being alive in any fashion.
Yeah. And
But it would make sense.
So Joe says in the chat that like there was a small little retcon, and like Hollow Purple before was like existence erasure.
Yeah, it
And-
did used to be existence erasure.
Yeah.
It's matter deletion.
And now it's suddenly not anymore. And maybe it's because Sukuna uses domain amplification to like lessen the attack or whatever, but yeah, it's a little retcon. It's kind of weird, but yeah, it is what it is. And then the message above was Nagihanji talking about how Mahoraga adapts multiple times. They find that weird because if he already has a solution, why would he keep adapting to it? And I'm kind of indifferent on that. I don't think it's good or bad per se. We did see that like in the Shibuya incident when Sukuna was fighting Mahoraga, that it adapted to cleave and, or like Sukuna wasn't sure if it adapted to slashing attacks in general or like his technique. And then it was able to parry his first attacks, and then when he opened his domain, he was still vulnerable to the attacks. I think that's why Mahoraga keeps adapting, because Mahoraga could still be vulnerable to attacks if they're like strengthened or if they're used in a different way. Maybe that's why he keeps adapting. I'm not sure. I don't mind the change though. It's not something that really ruins it for me. I think the chapter really ruined it for me that Gojo got off-screened. That's like a major no-no. And then like we don't see a flashback to like Sukuna charging the attack. So we don't know if Gojo got perception blitzed, or if he was caught off guard, or if he was like cocky, thinking that the infinity would block it. We don't know. So now we just have this double spread panel of Gojo lying on the ground, and yeah, that's it. Like, what are we supposed to do with this?
I guess we're just supposed to cope. Cause yeah. Like you were saying, it's just a mess. It's honestly just such a mess. Cause we don't know if it well, I think honestly the worst way that this can go is if they say that this has no wind up, no charge time. It's just instant. Because then he's writing himself into an even further corner.
Yeah.
Having it, well, because it's even worse, because saying that it has time to charge up and it has wind up and it has like emotion to it makes it even weirder for Gojo to get hit by it. So I think right now we're in a very dangerous limbo for what Gege wants to do next.
Mm-hmm.
He has to be very, very careful with how he writes these next couple of chapters, because I think that depending on how these next couple of chapters go, it could make or break the series for a lot of people. Having a bad ending or an unsatisfying ending can really paint the series in a new light. Now, I know that he did go back and change a couple things about the ending, but like the original Attack on Titan ending, nobody liked that.
Yeah.
Everybody hated that shit because of just how unsatisfying it was. It made it seem like the entire story just happened for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where we're almost heading for like JJK. I don't want to say like we're even close to that, but it makes you wonder like, how good are you going to wrap up these characters? And are you going to do them dirty, or are you going to give them their due diligence? Because it kind of feels a little rushed right now.
Agreed. There is like at some points Gege takes their time, And at other points, Gege is just completely rushing. And I feel like this chapter is an example of Gege rushing. Because there were other chapters where they were rushing, like the chapter where we got the cliffhanger of Megami and Takaba going to fight the military guys. And then the next chapter opens up and like they're already dealt with. Like, come on. At least show us that. Like, oh, it's so sad. Like we don't even have one last fight of Megami before
Yeah,
he
we
got
didn't,
taken
and it
over.
was a little bit sadder because I remember them specifically saying like using modern weaponry versus sorcerers would be effective,
Mm-hmm.
but we never even got to see that plot point really fleshed out.
Not at all. And another time where I felt like Gege was kind of rushing was with Yaga's death. Like that fight just completely gets skipped. So we just see like the fight starts with him, Yaga versus Gakuganji, and then the fight ends, and then Panda runs up. We didn't even see what happened. So it's another moment where I'm like, damn.
We also didn't really get to hear more about Gojo's time in the prison realm.
Mm-hmm.
We know he learned from that experience, but we don't know really like how it was. He just described it as being like super busy at work and it taking forever.
Yeah.
And that's really all we got. It would have been nice to hear more about it because they had an entire month, I'm pretty sure, right? From
Yeah.
the moment he was released to the Sukuna fight.
They did.
I genuinely think we had like a chapter in between that.
Yeah, I would
Maybe
have
not even
liked to have a
full
chapter. I would have liked to have a chapter. Yeah. It's like, we know the higher ups got killed. Who killed them? We don't know. Did Yuta and Inumaki kill them? Did Gojo kill them? Who killed the higher ups? Did Kenjaku do it after he didn't need them anymore?
Yeah, that also brings up the point. Where is Inumaki?
Yeah, true. Where's Toto? Where are they?
Where's Nobara?
Okay, I want to get into that. So, people were saying that because Nobara wasn't in the Gojo's imaginary mind space at the beginning of the last chapter, that is confirming that Nobara is still alive.
That sounds like cope.
And to that I will say it's possible, but Yuki also wasn't inside of that memory. Well, okay, Yuki's kind of different because Gojo never met Yuki. But I don't know. That brings me to my next question. Do you think that this is actually the afterlife, or is it just a figment of his imagination?
I actually don't think it's a figment of his imagination because of what Haibara says to I'm blanking so hard on it.
To Nanami.
Yeah,
We're
to
like-
Nanami, there we go, Nanami. He says, sorry, I did butt in there a little bit. And that calls back to how he actually died. He says, no, I can't say that to him because it will become a curse. And I don't think that if this was a figment of his imagination that Haibara would have said that at all, because it's something that actually happened in reality that Gojo never got to witness. So it
True.
makes me think that this is real.
True. But as Nanami was dying, he also had like a figment of his imagination happen. Because
Was it a figment or was it reality?
No. He was looking at Mahito, and then suddenly, in the place of Mahito, he saw Haibara pointing at Yuji. You remember that?
I do.
So I'm just wondering, do they like see their life flash before their eyes and like start seeing stuff on their deathbed? Or is it actually like them communicating with the afterlife? And that goes deeper into what Kenjaku said, like how the space between dreams and reality is a curse. The cursed realm and all that stuff. I want that to be explored a bit more, because let's say that the beginning of the chapter with Gojo in his teen years, with all the dead people there. Let's say that that is a figment of his imagination. Then it would mean that a lot of the stuff he's saying is just like things that he was thinking on his own. Right? So like him saying that Sukuna wasn't able to give me his all though, blah blah blah. And like his talk with Geto, and like him saying that he wishes that Geto was there to pat him on the back. That would all just be like Gojo in his own mind. But if it was actually the afterlife, I don't know. It's weird. Because would Geto even be in the afterlife? Because his body is still being like actively used. Like he isn't alive, but you know his body is still existing. It still has a beating heart. It's just that Kenjaku's using it.
Yeah, and I remember like specifically like if we go back to when that weird grandma resurrected Toji, like they said like his body lost to like or his body overtook his soul or something. And it brings into the point of like the body also has part of the soul. And it's so gross. It's so gross to think about because it makes a lot of questions. But is Geto still like partly residing inside of Kenjaku and seeing everything he does? I think maybe simply because of the way he reacted when
Gojo got sealed.
asked him like, "Are you really just gonna let yourself get used like that?" And so the question you asked is, would Geto even be in the afterlife? It's such a messy one. It's such a gross question because you have to get into literally like the nitty-gritty details.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes so many more questions than it answers. And I feel like that's kind of the pattern we've been getting with these like past couple chapters.
Yep.
A lot of questions, basically no answers.
All right. So another thing that I wanted to talk about was on the last panel where we see Kashimo like coming in. If you look on the right side of the page, there's a text box that says "Sparring no time to mourn the death of Gojo Satoru." And that text box is covering what is supposedly the top half of Gojo's body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, is there that much blood on the ground because Sukuna, after Gojo's body fell down, like completely slashed the top half into bits? Because Sukuna knows that reverse curse technique starts in the brain, or at least in the head, right? So he should know to finish off Gojo. Instead of just chopping him in half, he would like completely finish him off. Because if you look back at the panel where Gojo's top half gets separated, you see that his arm, like both of his arms, are also lying on the ground. They're not attached to his torso.
Mm-hmm.
And on the panel, like on the last page, his arms are gone. So did Gojo completely get like evaporated?
Oh shit, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. Because if he completely got evaporated, it's done. There is no revival. Because Gege isn't afraid of like off-screening characters. He is not afraid of off-screening stuff. So if he off-screened Sukuna slicing him up even more, then all this Lotus stuff would just be a red herring.
Man. So the next chapter comes out in what, like 2 days?
Yep. But if I'm gonna be honest, I don't think we're gonna get a a conclusion on these questions I have on Gojo in the next chapter. I think it's just gonna focus on Kashimo against Sukuna. Maybe like the coming 3 chapters are gonna focus on Kashimo versus Sukuna. And then after that we could probably get like a definitive answer. But I don't think we're gonna get an answer next week. At least next chapter.
Really? Not even like a shot of Gojo's body and everyone talking about it?
Oh,
No,
that's a good one.
we're probably gonna be hyping up Kashimo and revealing his curse technique. They've been dangling little hints about it like this entire time.
Yeah.
Just absolutely glazing my man Kashimo. He's literally been like, oh yeah, but we don't know his curse technique. His curse technique. It's always about Kashimo's goddamn curse technique. I'm ready to know what his curse technique is.
Yeah. Same, actually. Same. Oh, by the way, do you need like a water break or bathroom break or whatever?
No, I'm all good. I got water right here.
Oh, bet. Let's see. There was some other stuff too. Do you think that Kenjaku is gonna betray Sukuna now that he's like weakened and stuff?
Uh, see, the thing is, maybe, but maybe not, because we don't know what their binding vow was, and if they've completed both of their ends of the deal yet. Because, like Kenjaku was saying when he was talking to Mahito about not repairing,
Yeah.
Mekamaru's real body, he said, making a binding vow with yourself is a lot simpler, because if you break it, you lose whatever you gained.
Yeah.
But making a binding vow with like others is like making a deal with cursed energy itself.
Yeah.
And not following through with that end of the deal can get very unpredictable. So I don't know if he's able to betray Sukuna yet.
All right. So
And he will.
here's what I think. I think it's super vague on whether Kenjaku is even obligated to keep his end of the deal. And I'll tell you why. The reason why I think so is because at some point in the story, Kenjaku starts explaining that when he body hops, the like binding vow itself gets negated, or like it becomes null and void. He says something like that. Like when he gained Geto's body, that all the painstakingly made binding vows that he made over the millennia, that they no longer exist. And so he says that at some point. Or maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but so then I'm wondering, did Kenjaku make this binding vow with Sukuna before he split him into the cursed fingers? Or did he like make a second binding vow after? Because the way how I interpreted it was that the initial binding vow was that Kenjaku would split Sukuna up into the fingers, and in exchange, Sukuna would be a player in the culling games. That's how Sukuna was already registered. So that's the what I interpreted to be the initial binding vow, and then I assumed that they made a second, because that binding vow was already done the moment Sukuna got split up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I assumed they made a secondary binding vow that says that Sukuna would protect Kenjaku up until the Gojo versus Sukuna fight, and in exchange, Kenjaku would do something for Sukuna, but we don't know what. Or is it just one large binding vow, like one all-encompassing binding vow?
I'm not sure. Because I'm sure part of the binding vow was to just make a vessel for Sukuna to inhabit later.
Yeah.
Like most of the others. But if what's it called? Because there has to be more than one. Or it has to be a multi-part binding vow. because at the very end, when Gojo gets released from the prison realm,
Mm-hmm.
he says, "I can't fight you," or like, "Don't you have something else to finish up?" Like referencing his binding vow, and that's why they move the fight a month from now, or a month from when he gets released in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
simply because he has something else to do. We never really get told what it is. It'll probably get revealed towards the end when Kenjaku starts to make his move, like on what Sukuna actually did for him. But as of this moment, it's kind of just a dangling plot point. We don't know what it is or if it's been done, because if it hasn't been done, Kenjaku can't betray him,
Right.
and if it has been done, then he'll pull a Mahito and just be like, "Shall I save you, Sukuna?" Honestly, I think that would be just the biggest fuck you ever.
True,
The
true,
best way
true.
to end it. He just absorbs Sukuna from fucking Megami's body, and that's it.
Yeah.
A lot to know, a lot that we need to know that we probably won't know, unfortunately.
Okay, lastly, do you think that the dream sequence of the last chapter was a form of character assassination?
Oh, 100%. That was 100% character assassination.
You
That
do?
felt, yeah, that felt so out of character for Gojo. Gojo, I feel like would never have said that.
Okay, tell me why you think that. Like in details, why you think that it's character assassination.
Even when he's losing, he never admits that somebody is stronger than him. Like when he lost to Toji,
Mm-hmm.
we don't get like a moment where he's like, "Oh shit, this man's really strong." Gojo's never thinking about losing, really, even when he's losing.
True. True, true,
And
true.
it's so weird that right now he's just like, "Oh, yeah, Sukuna was so strong. He was just so I don't think I could beat him even without the 10 shadows. He was never even trying. I was never even on his level to begin with." That was like, okay, we don't gotta glaze Sukuna that hard. I feel like the person talking is not Gojo. That's not Gojo.
But
That's
maybe
imposter.
maybe it's because Gojo is finally dead. Because in hidden inventory, when he never admits defeat, he still has a chance. But now he's like actually done for. Maybe that's the difference.
Mm, I'm not willing to accept it. It still feels incredibly out of character because it feels like he should still be able to regenerate unless he's just giving up,
Yeah,
or unless like you were saying, he got literally evaporated at the very end.
yeah. And then another weird panel is like inside of the dream sequence when Gojo's talking about Sukuna, we see the panel of Sukuna like with the camera facing his side profile, and then they repeat the line that Yorozu said with like the loneliness that comes with unrivaled strength. The one who will teach you about that love is dot dot dot. How does Gojo know about that? How does he know about that?
uh, you know, the six eyes are just like a spectator thing, I guess. While he
No,
was in the prison realm, he was just
no,
just.
absolutely not.
I'm trolling so hard. I'm trolling. I know it's not. Honestly, I think the only reason that he would know, I say that with really large quotation marks next to it, and I say know that, is because he's been experiencing that too. And I guess he can kind of just assume that Sukuna feels the same.
Possibly.
That's the only way I see this making sense.
Also, why was Toji inside of his dream sequence? Why was he there?
You know, man, I guess it's just all the dead people because, like, the star plasma vessel and her, like, nurse caretaker maid are there. So I
Yeah,
guess
but
it
like
makes
he
sense
had
that they're
actual
all there.
connections to them.
I mean, he technically had a connection to Toji too, kind of in a weird way. The person who made him really who he is today.
Ah, fair, I guess.
It's still kind of weird
But if
that
I
he's
feel
there in
like
the
I
first
feel like
place.
if it was actually the afterlife and not a dream sequence, that Toji would not hang around Gojo in the afterlife. Like Toji would go looking for Megami's mom. I feel like.
True, because he had that development when he got resurrected for a bit.
Yeah. Why would he be hanging around the students? Outside of like them being a part of like the job that he had to assassinate them, or at least assassinate Rico, he has no connection to these guys. He doesn't care about them. Why would he be chilling around there in the afterlife?
Yeah,
So
and he even
that
questions it too. He says, like,
yeah,
now I'm hoping this isn't a dream.
it's just leading me more and more to believe that it's just like a figment of his imagination and not actually the afterlife. So
Yeah, it probably is a figment of his imagination. I'm gonna say it is until it's proven, or we get more evidence to say that it isn't, or is.
yeah.
Because right now, it just feels so like a too good to be true moment.
And then there's another weird panel where Gojo was like talking to Yaga, and he was like, "I thought you said no Jujutsu sorcerer dies without regrets." So does that mean that Gojo died without any regrets right now? Like, is he regretless? So he doesn't regret that he left all his students there with a super powerful Sukuna and he didn't actually save the day. Does he seriously have no regrets? He wasn't able to change Jujutsu society. He wasn't able to do anything that he wanted to do. How does he have no regrets? That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, that's actually a really weird one. He's talking about having no regrets as he never told Megami about his dad. I mean, never got to tell
Yeah,
Megami about his dad. He never got to save Megami.
yeah.
He never got to reform Jujutsu Society. He never got to
He never got to avenge
in
Geto. He
he never
never.
got to avenge Geto. He never
Yeah.
got to make Sukuna try, with quotation marks doubled, even tripled around that. It's just such a gross. This is what I was talking about. Like, yes, this is character assassination.
And then in the JJK Zero plotline, he's like telling Yuta that love is like the most twisted curse of all. And then this chapter, I feel like, makes him believe that it wasn't. And then it's super weird. I'll tell you another reason why it's weird. Gojo at the beginning of the dream sequence is like he's sad that Sukuna didn't go all out or use all his abilities or whatever, right? Is that not a regret in and of itself? How,
I think it is.
so
But
how
maybe
is
he
he
doesn't see
then?
it that way.
Maybe it's so weird. It's so weird. I feel like if this dream sequence got cut, that the chapter itself would actually be better. I don't know.
Probably, but what else would be in the chapter? It'd be like a 3-page chapter if the
Or
dream
or
sequence wasn't it.
the dream sequence could happen, but differently.
Probably would need to happen a lot differently for it to be better. Hopefully, in the anime adaptation, they change a couple things.
Yeah, they could change stuff, but I feel like if they just add more content, that they could actually accomplish the same goal.
Yeah, they can definitely accomplish more if they add more
Yeah.
and maybe make it a more satisfying ending if this truly is the end for our beautiful blue-eyed king.
Yeah.
But for the Kenjaku merger, I still don't know what the fuck is supposed to happen with that. It's just another dangling plot thread
Yeah, it's super
that
weird.
may or may not happen.
I feel like
It's
it
just
should
supposed to
though.
merge like all the cursed spirits or something and all the cursed energy into something and then like use Tengen to merge the barriers too.
Mm-hmm.
So much. It's just so much.
Yeah,
And we have no
and
definitive
he
answer on
has
what's gonna happen.
Ninjaku has a prerequisite on activating the merger, and that is that all players of the culling game need to have died. But a lot of our main characters were players. So is he gonna kill them too, or what's gonna happen?
Maybe that's what the Sukuna binding vow with Kinjaku is as well.
Maybe.
Making
I I
preparations to be able to kill everybody.
I just don't want this to turn into another Akame ga Kill where everyone dies. I don't want that. I want
Yeah, it'll
some
be
people to
very
live.
unsatisfying. No real conclusion to be had if that happens.
Yeah.
This goes from being like a 9 to a 10 out of 10 to being like a 6 out of 10.
And then lastly, I just wanna. What was I gonna say again? Oh yeah. So at some point there was an interview that Gege Akutami had where he was like, either one person dies from like the quartet of Gojo, Megami, Yuji, and Nobara, or one person lives. It's either one of them dies, one of them lives. And despite the fact that Gojo just died, Megami's brain is mush, Nobara is supposedly dead, I still feel like this could go either way. Because if Gojo's the one to end up dying for real, and Sukuna eventually, with Yuji's help, is forced to leave Megami's body and Megami recovers and whatever, then it could be that Nobara is also alive. But just that her eye socket is like broken or like torn or transmutated or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And with Gojo just dying, it could also solidify that Yuji's gonna be the last man standing. Because you know, Yuji had like the curse that his grandfather put on him, where he was supposed to, like live a good life and then die with like his friends and family around him.
Yeah.
And people were saying that that was a curse put on him that will not happen. That he'll like end up outliving everyone. So
Honestly,
I feel like
I'm
it
a
could go
big
either
fan
way.
of that theory.
Yeah, that you're just gonna outlive everyone.
Not that he's gonna outlive everyone, but that his grandfather did put the curse on him. We've seen that saying very specific things will become a curse for people. That's the main reason why Nanami didn't say what he wanted to say to Yuji, because he didn't want to leave him with a curse.
Right.
And so he just said, "You got it from here." I think that's partially why, like, the memory thing happens with people who are about to kill him. It happened with Toto. And it's a little weirder to talk about with it happening with his actual half brother thing related person.
Yeah,
Uh,
Choso.
yeah, Choso, because they actually are related.
Mm-hmm.
Same parents, because Kachimo is in two different bodies.
Yeah.
He was doing backflips on it.
All right. So to close off, what would you rate this mini arc on a scale of 1 to 10? And tell me
Well,
why.
considering how it's still not technically over,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say like 7.5 out of 10.
Ooh.
Just because of that last chapter that we just got.
Damn. Okay. Okay. And if that
It's
last
just
chapter didn't
really
happen,
bad.
if
If
that.
last chapter didn't happen, this is like a 9.5 out of 10.
Ooh. Okay. And what would be
I'm
needed
okay
to
with
make it?
Gojo dying. Let me be very clear. I'm okay with him dying. I
Yeah. Same.
expect him to.
Same.
But
Same.
you need to do it
The
in
right
a
way.
way that's respectful to his character,
Yeah.
and that makes sense. You can't just do what you did. You can't just off-screen Gojo without showing what the fuck happened. It makes no sense.
Okay, so
So,
you
yeah.
say if this last chapter wasn't the way it was, it would have been a 9.5. But
Yeah, I give it a 9.5 10.
what would be needed to elevate it to a 10?
I was hoping we would have seen more of what's it called? I was hoping we would have seen more of Sukuna's arsenal as well.
So like the open with the fire
Yeah,
and
like explaining like what black box open means, because
right.
we know probably that it's not just the fire technique.
Mm-hmm.
Probably has more in there, and I was hoping we would have seen more
Yeah.
of his arsenal besides like showing what Megumi's potential is.
Yeah. I can agree with that because the fight went from becoming Gojo versus Sukuna to becoming a Limitless versus Ten Shadows fight, and it ended with Cleave. But it was, I feel like it was very dependent on Ten Shadows, whereas if it really would have been like the true Gojo versus Sukuna that was built up from chapter 2, it would have just been like Gojo versus Sukuna and not Limitless versus Ten Shadows plus Cleave and Dismantle.
Yeah.
Personally, I think I would give it in its entirety an 8. I think the last chapter did ruin it for me, but even though it ruined it for me, I think that the coming chapters can still rectify a lot of the stuff.
He's gonna
And
have to do. He's gonna have to put in some overtime on these next chapters to undo this damage.
And I'm not just talking about like that the next chapters are good or bad or whatever, but I mean like in terms of explaining more of the process of the ending of the fight. I'd like more of that to be explained. And I think another part of the fight that I was kind of missing was it didn't really feel like there were any stakes. Despite it being super stakey, there were a lot of stakes at play. But since everyone and their moms kind of already knew that Gojo narratively needed to lose, I felt like there wasn't really that much of a reason to expect the unexpected. Because we expected Gojo to die, and it did happen. Right? And I was just kind of missing that aspect. And
I get what you mean.
yeah, I think that would be it. I also would have liked to get an update on what happened to Ijichi, Utahime, and Gakuganji. Because when Gojo fired off the Hollow Purple, they just kind of disappeared in the story. They didn't go to like the place where Yuji and those guys that were watching the fight from. They just left.
Hey man, it's a really long walk.
True.
It's a really long walk to get there.
True, but I would have liked a status update. It would have been cool. And yeah, where's Takaba? Where's Todo?
Todo's on vacation. Takaba's in that dark room thinking of jokes.
But yeah, those are kind of the things I was missing. But the action was good. I think the fight choreography itself was good. There was a lot of creativity shown. Because like in one of my videos, I even speculated that Gojo could like summon multiple blues and reds at the same time and fight like that. and like position them in ways that it would catch Sukuna off guard or his opponent off guard, and exactly that happened. So that was cool to see, and I liked the domain clashes because they gave us a lot of insight on how the peak of the power system works. So that aspect of the fight was really good. That's why I still give the miniature arc such a high score, despite the last chapter. Because I feel it's the same thing what I have with Attack on Titan, where I don't like the last 3 chapters, but everything before that I had like at a 10 out of 10. And I'm not gonna let the last chapter or like the last 3 chapters ruin this entire experience that I had. So I still would rate it solidly high. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I respect it.
And yeah, I'm interested in seeing where it's gonna go from here. Wednesday we're gonna get more leaks. Oh, one more thing. I genuinely think that the community would be better off without the leaks.
Really?
Yes. And the reason why is because the mistranslations that go around when the leaks are coming out are crazy. Bro, we thought that Gojo was talking about his own dad.
I remembered that shit. Like, people were so confused why he was talking about his dad. Like, he had never talked about him before.
There were so many arguments just spawning because the explanation of how Sukuna killed Gojo was not properly translated. It caused so much problems and so much infighting within the community. And when the actual chapter came out, of course we didn't like it, but it wasn't as bad as the leaks made it seem. And so I genuinely think that we are better off without Miyamura or any leakers, period. Like, if you just have the actual chapter fully translated and stuff when it comes out, then you can actually take your time and read it and just digest the information, and you wouldn't have people just blabbing nonsense back and forth, or like people being left in suspense because the chapter isn't clear.
Yeah, it also doesn't help that Miyamura releases them like what, every 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, it does not help. It does not help. So
it really doesn't help when Miyamura exactly releases one picture with a translation, and then you wait 15 minutes for the next one. It gives you too much time, and especially with all the YouTubers and TikTokers uploading them the frame they get uploaded, it just perpetuates the misinformation cycle.
It's so bad. There's so much misinformation going around in JJK. And thankfully, we actually have a new translator for the Viz versions of JJK, like the officials. Do you know about Lightning from Twitter? Anyways, they stopped being on Twitter, but they replaced John Wary, who was the second translator of JJK. The first one got outed as being like a pedo or whatever. Yeah, that was kind of sad. Or like, yeah, sad that even happened, the whole situation. Not just sad that he got caught, but
Wait,
what?
No. Yeah, it's actually really sad that he got. Well, it's not sad he got exposed, but it's sad that he would do such a thing.
Exactly. That was what I was trying to say. And so he was a pretty good translator though, but he wasn't perfect either. And then the second guy was John Wary, and man, John Wary caused so much misinformation. And I'm so glad he got replaced. Sorry. I'm so sorry that I have to say, but like I don't genuinely wish for someone to be put out of a job, but if it's causing misinformation, then I'd rather you not be on that job.
Yeah.
So yeah, from here on out, it's gonna be smooth sailing, or at least that's what I hope. Lightning's pretty good. So I hope that it's going to be smooth sailing from here, reading JJK. It's going to be a fun experience. And yeah, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts.
My closing thought is Gojo will rise again. I don't care if the series ends and he's still dead. He'll be forever alive in my heart.
True, 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 true. I like
That's all I
that.
have to say.
Alright, you wanna like give yourself a shout out, or do you have anything upcoming that you want to promote or whatever?
Nah, I'm just an underground guy who plays Smash too much.
Same. I love Smash. Good
Smash is
game.
so good. I need the next one to hurry up.
True.
I
Next
also need
console.
Dragon Quest 12s.
Oh, it might happen.
Well, it's been officially announced. We just haven't had any news about it in like 2
I
years.
see. In limbo.
I'm crying.
Yeah. But thank you guys for watching. Thanks for tuning into the stream today. I appreciate all of you that were in the chat or that are watching the playback. And I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, DCA, for joining.
Anytime.
And yeah. Later.